Alright guys, Dominic here for Kit Guru, and today we have more RTX 3080 coverage for you. And that's because we are looking at a custom card, this time from MSI. It's the 3080 Gaming X Trio. So this new card has a rated boost clock of 1815 MHz, which is actually a 105 MHz increase compared to the Founders Edition, while it also uses MSI's new THICC 2 cooler with THICC 4.0 fans. Priced at £759.99 here in the UK, it is certainly a fair bit more expensive than the £649 MSRP, but in this video we'll go over everything you need to know about this graphics card and whether or not it is worth the extra money. Starting with a look at the design then, I have to say the 3080 Gaming X Trio isn't really a radical departure from the previous iterations we have seen from this series. The shroud still has a fairly edgy and angular appearance, while it's also still mostly black and grey sections. I do personally quite like it though. It is very colour neutral as well, so you'll have absolutely no problems installing this in a colour matched build. It is worth making very clear though that this is a very big graphics card. It actually measures in at 323 by 140 by 56 millimeters. As it is such a large graphics card that even weighs over 1.5 kilograms, MSI deemed it necessary to even include a support bracket for the card itself. So this will simply install into the expansion slot underneath the graphics card and will help prop it up and eliminate any GPU sag. In terms of the THICC 2 cooler, it's obviously a triple fan design and each fan measures 90 millimeters. These are also MSI's new THICC 4.0 design, with the key difference being that each fan blade will now come in pairs of two, where you can see they're actually physically linked together. And MSI just says this should help focus the airflow onto the heatsink itself. Flipping the card over now, it's certainly not unusual to see a full-length backplate, but what is unusual is that this backplate is actually made from graphene instead of the usual aluminium plates that we see. MSI actually claims that this is 4 times stronger than your typical plastic backplate, and up to 20 times better at dissipating heat. The latter point we do find a strange one, as nobody would include a plastic backplate for heat dissipation. Where we do see cards with plastic backplates, it's purely for aesthetics, but it is still good to see a full-length metal backplate, and it's certainly interesting that MSI has done things differently here. Elsewhere, we can see that MSI has gone balls to the wall with its power connectors. You'll actually need 3 8-pins to run the Gaming X Trio. While this can actually deliver up to 525 watts, including the power from the PCIe slot, I think this is definitely overkill for a 3080, and we will come on to our power testing later in the review. One other thing to note just before moving on is the video outputs, where we have 3 DisplayPort 1.4a ports and then 1 HDMI 2.1. Next up, we will open up the card and take a look at that PCB, which is a custom job from MSI. This actually has a 16-stage power delivery using onsemi's NCP 302150 MOSFETs, which are each rated up to 50 amps. Technically, these are co-packaged power stage solutions that integrate the high side and low side MOSFETs with the driver in a single package, saving space. We can also get a look at those memory modules from Micron, and these are labelled D8BGW. Finally, we can also note this small metal bracket which actually screws onto the PCB and the I/O bracket, and it is simply designed to prevent any unwanted bending of the PCB. Lastly, we will also take a look at the heatsink. This is a very hefty unit comprised of 2 fin stacks, and it actually uses a total of 7 nickel-plated heat pipes. 6 of these measure 6mm in diameter, while the final one is slightly thicker at 8mm. These pipes actually make direct contact with the GPU die, but there are some additional plates that contact with the VRM as well as the VRAM via thermal pads. So that will do it for our look at the card and its overall design. It's now time to talk about performance. For all of our testing, we used our custom-built system provided by PC Specialist, featuring an Intel i9-10900K overclocked to 5.1 GHz on all cores. This is paired with an ASUS ROG Maximus 12 Hero motherboard as well as 32GB of Corsair Vengeance DDR4 3600. If we start off by looking at the thermal performance of the card, things may not initially seem so impressive here. We saw the GPU hovering between 72 and 73 degrees Celsius during our 30-minute stress test, and that is certainly not a bad temperature at all, and it is still a 3-degree improvement over the Founders Edition. However, I was expecting slightly more from this cooler considering its sheer size and those new design features. It's when we move on to our noise testing that we understand why this was the case. Simply put, the Gaming X Trio is, for all intents and purposes, inaudible when under load. Its fans only spun to around 13-16 RPM, and we measured noise level at barely 34 decibels from a 30cm distance, which is actually coming very close to our noise floor. It's certainly one of the quietest graphics cards I have ever tested, to the point where you could only really hear the fans by pressing your ear right up against the case. It is seriously impressive stuff. After that, we come to power draw. Total system power is around the 470 watt mark, which is similar to the Gigabyte 3080 Eagle, but that is only because both cards have a 340 watt power target. Based on our GPU-Z board power data, the GPU-only power draw averages 338 watts for the Gaming X Trio measured across our 30-minute stress test. The Gaming X Trio uses this extra power headroom to boost the clock speed well above the Founders Edition. Its rated boost clock is 105 MHz faster, and based on our testing that played out almost exactly, with the MSI's average frequency clocking in at 1957 MHz. It did actually boost as high as 2040 MHz out of the box, but unsurprisingly that sort of frequency wasn't sustainable over our 30-minute stress test. Now then, let's talk gaming performance. Here we're only going to be looking at a few select games at 4K purely because we already know how the 3080 performs, and this testing is really more to see how much faster the Gaming X Trio is compared to Nvidia's Founders Edition. That said, if you do want to see all of our benchmarks, including 1080p and 1440p data, then do head over to the written article on kitguru.net. First up though, we will look at control, and here the Gaming X Trio is doing relatively well. Its 54 frames per second average is actually 4% better than the Nvidia Founders Edition, even if the gap is just 2 frames. We also see that same level of improvement when testing Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Here, the Gaming X Trio is 3 frames faster than the Founders Edition, which works out as another 4% margin. Moving on to Ghost Recon Breakpoint, this is another game where we see the exact same trends. Here, the MSI 3080 takes a 3 FPS lead, which works out as another 4% performance advantage relative to Nvidia's card. Red Dead Redemption 2 does take things even further though, with the Gaming X Trio's increased clock speed able to deliver a 5% performance boost over Nvidia's 3080 Founders Edition, again at 4K. Finally, Total War Saga Troy delivers the smallest performance boost across any of the games we tested today, with the MSI GPU just a single frame faster than the Founders Edition, and that works out as a difference of 2%. Those 5 games we looked at just then really are a perfect example of the performance we can see from this card. In fact, averaged across all the games we tested at 4K, it is on average 4% faster than Nvidia's Founders Edition. This, I think, is actually going to be one of the better results for a custom card. For instance, Gigabyte's Eagle only comes in on average 2% faster, so it's still hardly a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but probably one of the better factory overclocks we will see. Just to see if we could push things any further though, we did turn our hand to manual overclocking. Like the other 3080s we've already tested though, the gains here aren't huge. We were only able to add 40 MHz to the GPU core, but we did manage 850 MHz to the memory. This only resulted in gains of between 3 to 4% in our testing, so that really isn't a massive increase at all in terms of real world frame rates. However, considering the Gaming X Trio's factory overclock was already fairly decent, improvements over our stock RTX 3080 Founders Edition do come in slightly higher, between 5 to 8% depending on the game. Overall then, I have to say there is a lot to be impressed with when looking at MSI's RTX 3080 Gaming X Trio. By far and away, its biggest selling point is its very, very low levels of noise. I would actually go as far as to say this is one of the quietest graphics cards I have ever tested. It is a highly impressive area for this card. It is also a fair amount faster than Nvidia's Founders Edition, not by much, but gains of 4% are decent in this day and age, and I do also really like the Gaming X Trio design. So while it really is an improvement over Nvidia's Founders Edition in all of the key areas, the question really becomes more of, are those improvements worth an extra £110 to you? That's because this card has an MSRP of £759.99 here in the UK, £110 more than the MSRP. I personally do think that the Ampere GPU itself is a lot better value than what we saw with the 20 series, so spending a bit more on a custom card is definitely more palatable, and I think that's only especially the case if you're planning on buying something like a 3080 to have it last for several years. At the end of the day, there's no escaping the fact that this is an excellent graphics card, but you do pay a premium price for a premium product, and it really is just going to come down to you and whether or not you think its improvements are worth the extra money. That is going to do it for this video though, guys, so leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment down below. Would you pay the extra £110 for the Gaming X Trio, or would you rather look at other cards priced closer to the MSRP? Do let me know your thoughts. While you're there, make sure you are subscribed to keep on top of all the Ampere coverage that we have coming for you over the next few weeks. And if you want to consider backing us on Patreon, guys, we run some exclusive giveaways while you also see some of our content early. Until then though, guys, I've been Dominic for Kit Guru, and I will see you in the next video.